Next, we have the curve. The curve does exactly what it's supposed to do. It creates a curve. And let's take a look at the four particular properties of the curve, at least that we're starting with now. The radius is the radius of a curve. Now, I'm thinking of having a default radius, but I decided, no, I'm not going to have that. Because obviously we have to have some sort of radius on the curve to be able to tell us, hey, how big is this going to be? Is it going to be a nice, big, huge, giant, let's say 100 pixels gentle curve, or is it going to be one of those really sharp curves at 10 pixels? I know that's ridiculous, but still, that's what I mean. We can use the radius. We can say, hey, we're going to really get this curve in there. Degrees is going to be very important. We're going to have a stock number of degrees. I'm not going to allow the layouts to be able to have their own curves themselves. By having the stock ones, it's going to make it easier on the developer. Later on, maybe, but not right now. So we have basically a 45-degree curve, a 90-degree curve, 135, 180, 225, 270, 315, or 360. The key here with the curve is that it always starts and ends flat. So whatever the direction vector happens to be, it's going to be a flat piece. And that's going to be very important because straights by default are flat, even if straights by default are flat, and even if they are contoured, they're still going to end up being flat, for lack of a better term. And that's going to be very important because we're going to put banking on this particular curve. And we'll get to the banking shortly. So the length and width changes. The direction vector is determined by the curve itself. The length is obviously determined by the radius also. Degrees is going to be the number of degrees in the curve. It basically allows us to have a stock number of degrees within the curve. This is the whether we're going to go to 45-degree curve, 90-degree curve, 135-degree curve, 180, 225, 270, 315, or 360-degree curve. So this allows us to be able to do the curves. How we're going to do a 360-degree curve, I'll tell you that here in just a second. That really has to do with what we call depth drop. And depth drop is the ability to be able to say that, hey, as this curve is being drawn, I want you to go down the depth or the y-axis a certain number of pixels. And this depth drop is applied every 22.5 degree points. And what this does, this is very important in that it allows us to be able to, as the curve is going, to be able to drop the curve down. So you can be able to get a 360-degree curve if you put enough depth drop into it. So as it curves down, the terrain goes down. So by the time you get that 360, you basically have a tunnel underneath the old road. Or if you do that 270 one, you've now put the top road as a bridge underneath the bottom one. So normally, if you're doing something like a simple 90-degree curve, you would have no depths, and so the default is a blank array. But if you're doing these, long curves where you're going to have to create bridges or create tunnels, then you're going to have something to be able to say, I need to drop this curve as I go along here. The drops are done every 22.5 degrees. That means that, for instance, if we have a 45-degree curve, we should be expecting two numbers there in our depth drop. If we had a 90-degree curve, we should be expecting 4, 135, 6, 188, and so on and so forth. Finally, we have the curve directions, either set left or right from the perspective of the car. I'm not sure, honestly, how to deal with that one. I'm trying to figure out, okay, let's say, as the car is running down the track, it's either going to go to the left or go to the right. I was trying to figure out some sort of ordinal method, XYZ method doing that, but I really couldn't figure it out. So I'm just calling it left or right for right now. That may change. One of the big things we're going to have to also worry about here is we're going to have to worry about some sort of banking. And banking allows us to be able to keep the cars on the track. If the cars themselves are going at such a speed and they hit that hit a flat curve, the centrifugal force is going to send them off to the side, and everybody's just going to crash into the side of the wall. We don't want that to happen. Just like you have banked tracks at normal racetracks, or banked curves at normal racetracks, we're going to have banked curves here. A 45-degree curve, since it's so short, will have a 60-degree bank, while all others will have a 90-degree bank. Now, when you put that together, the beginning section of, or the beginning part of the curve and the ending part of the curve are always going to be flat in relationship to the straights that are coming into it. Once from the flat position, they're going to go to the bank and then come from the bank to another flat position. So the beginning and ending are always going to be flat in relationship to the direction vectors, while the banks will do whatever they have to do. So that's basically what the curve is. A little bit more complicated, and it was in the curves from the original game that we really had some issues, but we'll get it straightened out with this one. We now have a couple of new objects that we didn't have on the last ones. We now have called an anchor, and an anchor allows us to set a beginning position and a beginning position vector. And the reason we have that here with the anchor is the idea is that the anchor piece will either be at the very beginning of the track or at the very end. So you would put an anchor piece. An anchor piece has no. The anchor piece is basically would basically look like a wall, for lack of a better term. And what that will allow us to do is that if we put an anchor piece at the very beginning, we can set a beginning position and a beginning direction vector. Because remember I said earlier that the beginning position and or the starting position and the starting position direction vector of each piece is derived from the ending position and the ending direction vector of the previous piece. Well, somebody's got to start that off, and that's what the anchor is for. The anchor is going to say this is the start of the track. It's going to have a nice little wall there. So the anchor at the beginning of the track will have a beginning position and a beginning direction vector. If an anchor is placed at the end of the track, it will not have a beginning position and beginning direction vector, because it will just derive its starting one from the previous piece. But most importantly, it will automatically set the ending position and the ending direction vector to null. If you try to put a piece back up on the layout and the piece before it is null for ending position or for a ending position the vector, you know that's the end of the track. There is no more track. So we're going to be using the anchor pieces to be able to find the beginning of the track and the end of the track, and they're going to be a wall basically, and that will it's not important at the beginning of the track, but at the end of the track it's going to be important, so that as the cars pass the finish line, they have some place to hit at the end of the track and stop, and that's what's going to be important for us. So that's what the anchor piece is all about. The start line is going to be a very small straight section of track that is automatic, that has an automatic length to it. It has no contours in it whatsoever, and its primary job is to have the little gates at the very beginning, so that when the cars are piled onto the track, the gates will drop once the time is up and off they go. So the start line has a predefined length. It has zero contour, so it will always so there's no need to have any kind of it will always compute its ending position and ending direction vector, but it will just basically inherit that from the it will inherit everything from the old piece, put itself in there, and then just pass that along to the next piece. So you can't define a length or anything like that as a start line. It's just simply there, but its entire purpose is to start off the game. And consequently, you also have the finish line. Exact same thing there. The finish line will have a little detection device to it that will basically keep track, saying, "Oh, we just had a car pass the finish line. This was the car. You need to record that information," and it sends it back along to the game. Again, it's a straight with a fixed length, with no contour into it whatsoever. So the application just pops it on there and then doesn't do anything at all with it. So the idea is when you get to the final finish line, you can put the finish line there to be able to figure everything out. Then you have a small piece of straight so that the cars can kind of slow down, and then an anchor piece at the very end to end up the game. So that's all that the finish line does. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to this channel to view more videos. Click on the like button on this video and visit us at virtuoid.com. Also, support us on Patreon, where you can get access to member-only videos. Links are down below. Again, thank you very much for watching, and keep on coding.